David Bowie or Bowie, depending on your personal taste on how to pronounce it, was a British rock pop star from Bromley in Kent. He first started to come to prominence in the late 60s and early 70s and was musically active up until his death in 2016. He was noted for his ever-shifting style and his constant reinvention of himself musically and adopting a variety of personal public personas. His popularity waxed and waned over his career as the styles and his personas that he experimented with were more or less successful in terms of public connecting with them. Some might accuse him of style over substance, but it's more true, I think, to say that the style was the substance. He released 27 studio albums, including 2 credited to the band Tin Machine. He also had a career as an actor. He was an active artist, an art collector, and as one of the world's pop megastars, his history, public and private life, have all been endlessly picked over in various formats. Hi, my name's Dan. This was David Bowie's 13th studio album, and was the third in what has become known as the Berlin Trilogy, which were produced by Brian Eno and made in a period in David Bowie's life when he moved to Berlin from LA in order to escape the drug culture. And Berlin at that time was a particular hotbed of creative music. Also around that time, he was working a lot with his friend who was Iggy Pop. Now, I've heard this album before. In fact, I've reviewed this album before because before I was doing video reviews, I was doing a similar but more less adventurous series of reviews on a blog, and this was one of those that I reviewed. And in fact, so I've listened to it again, and I have read through the review, and I think the review pretty much says everything that I want to say. So from about now, I'm going to be mostly reading my previous review. So I hope you enjoy it. In my youth, I never really embraced David Bowie. I enjoyed a lot of his hits in the 70s, but I always kept him at sort of arm's length. As I've reviewed David Bowie albums over the last few years, my respect for him has grown. If I could hear this album without knowing that it was David Bowie, I would have been quite amazed by it, I think. So the music's definitely experimental, with sometimes quite a loose relation to the idea of key. This is enhanced by getting the guitarist, who's a guy called Adrian Belew, who was shortly after this going to join the band King Crimson. He possibly didn't know that at this time. Back to David Bowie. David Bowie got the guitarist to play without hearing the tracks beforehand, so he was playing it as a response to what he was hearing. During the recording of the music, they were using Brian Eno's oblique strategies cards. So they're a list of random suggestions to make changes to songs. If you're intrigued, go look them up. They're quite interesting. The tracks were developed musically before the lyrics were written. The most normal track, to my mind, is the first track, which to me feels a bit out of place on the rest of the album, and it didn't prepare me for what was about to come. The production and the playing are also odd. There's elements of other things in here. And from the look of the extensive Wikipedia page on the album, different critics have heard different elements. So I would say there's definitely shades of Talking Heads and the birth of alternative rock in here. There's some African influence. There's one song, which is Assassin, which has a blend of Turkish folk violin with reggae, but it's a bit more mechanical than most reggae is. There's hints of funk in the bass lines at times, but the reality is that most of this, the music here occupies ground that's in the wastelands between the normal genre islands. Apparently, David Bowie accused Gary Newman of copying this style, which is the thing that I can hear. Okay, so there's definitely a slab of krautrock and that kind of computer mechanical feel coming in through things like the model from Kraftwerk. There's a harshness, especially in the guitar, and there's just a general out of kilter feeling, as if the whole thing's kind of subtly broken, but strangely in a good way, I would say. So these are songs, they're about things. although sometimes making head or tail of what they're about is a bit tricky. Once again, I'm mostly relying on other people's commentary for this. I like the second half more for this, which is more about human failings. So the first half is more about places and travel. The track DJ is maybe the most poppy song. The track Boys Keep Swinging is a great track. And both of those are ones that I've heard before. Red Money is a cool track. The track Repetition is quite disturbing. It's about domestic abuse from the abuser's perspective, and it lays it on quite heavily. It's a good song, but it's not necessarily an easy listen. So I would say that the style here is good, and it has more substance than I might have imagined for David Bowie before I started doing these reviews. Especially musically, I think it's a really intelligent album musically. So it's an interesting album, and it's intrigued me, so I really liked it. And I'd love to know what you think, so please talk to me through the comments box. That's it from me for now.